Hey, happy Friday, folks, and thanks for joining me for this fifth part of our editorial art illustration masterclass here at Adobe Live. So what we've done up until this point is we've done sketches for a mock assignment. We had this idea of "Do Carrots Really Promote Healthy Vision" as the article that we were going to illustrate. And then the format, as you can see here, is 6 inches square, option to animate it, and fee $500. Now, of course, in the good old days, when I was working a lot as an editorial illustrator, if you're going to do animation, you would charge extra. I hope that still a lot of clients will negotiate for that and will do that. But we're really living in a weird time where sort of animation is becoming sort of expected for a lot of online publishers. You know, they will expect a little animation, a little movement in your illustration. So, you know, I'm not sure really where that sits right now. I was still able to negotiate a couple $100 more for animation. Not as long, it wasn't that long ago. It was maybe like 5-6 years ago when I was doing some stuff for like Wired, and it would do stuff for their print, and then I would for the online, they do a little animation, things like that. They're a Condé Nast publication. I'm not sure how the contracts are these days. You have to ask somebody who's doing that stuff a lot more regularly, but you know, you should push for it so we all can help each other out by making sure that rates stay fair for the kind of work that we do, because animating something isn't as simply as like hitting a button on the computer that says animate. If only it were. And if it were, perhaps the animation wouldn't be that good. I mean, you know, you want to make it something special. So but anyway, but I wanted to throw that in there because it's kind of a realistic thing to sometimes expect from the client depending on who you're working for. All right, so we had these three sketches. We had the one on the left here, Mr. Carrot Head. We had this one in the middle, the woman using the carrot is sort of like a telescope. And finally, this last one, which is the one I'm going to do today, which is this idea of really simple graphic solution of just the eye with the orange iris, which is representing the carrot, or maybe the health benefits of, you know, eating a ton of carrots or whatever. So I want to tackle that one today. Not totally sure about the style I'll approach it with, but I'm going to get started with the sketch. And I'm just going to transfer that to our canvas, and we'll just bounce over to where we were last time. This is kind of where we left off with that second one. And if you weren't around for the first, this is how it turned out as well. We painted this one with the gouache brushes, and you can see there's a lot of nice texture in there for this one. So the brushes really help to do that for you, to make a lot of the brush strokes visible, you know, and add that nice natural texture. So if this is more your jam, then you want to work in this painterly style. What I wanted to do with this series was show you 3 different styles and 3 different visual solutions for the same topic, right? That's kind of a really common thing with editorial art, is that you provide the art director with a couple of options, and stylistically, you know, you could go many different ways to tackle the same kind of subject matter. And so I wanted to do that here. So there's that sketch from before. Let's paste in our little sketch here and just knock that up to the right size, more or less. And I'm going to reduce the opacity here. So we'll just send that back. Hope that's not too faint for all of you to see. Now, the one thing I want to start by doing is just rearranging things a little bit. So I want this to be actually a dead center for my illustration, this eye shape. So I'm probably going to just take this and blow it up a little bigger, and then I'm going to see if I can align it to where it's mostly in the center. And I'll go ahead and use the alignment tools that Photoshop provides us with to really make sure that I get that right. So I'm going to use my Marque tool. Now, for your selection tools, or any tool that you have in Photoshop, this is a really handy trick to know. If you want to cycle through the subtools, right? So I have my selection tool for elliptical and rectangular Marque here. If I want to cycle back and forth between the elliptical and the rectangular, right? I hold down the Shift key, and then I hit the key on the keyboard that corresponds to that tool. In this case, it would be the M for Marque. So if I hit that, you can see it's switching back and forth, toggling between the two. So this is a really good key command if you don't want to constantly be going over to your toolbar. And I try as much as possible to avoid going to the toolbar all the time. When I'm working in Photoshop, I try and use the keyboard as much as possible. So, you know, like panning around my image with the space bar, zooming in and out using the space bar and the Option and Command keys. If you're on a PC, and when I say Command, just replace that with Control. And if I say Option, just replace that with Alt, okay? But anyway, yeah, so to toggle through, so a moment ago I had actually the rectangular marquee tool selected, and I glanced over there and I noticed that instead of coming over here and changing it, I just held down Shift on my keyboard and hit M one time, so I knew that would toggle it over to the elliptical marquee. All right, another thing, I want to actually draw this circle, and I want it to be a perfect circle, so if I hold down the Shift key, I know that I'm going to draw a perfect circle, right? This is helping me to draw something that is precise. The Shift key is your friend when it comes to working with precision or with additive functions, you know, so you want to add to something. Like if I want to add to this selection, I hold down the Shift key and then just add, right? But the other thing it does is it helps you with precision. You want to make a perfect circle. You want to make something that's like snapping. You want to rotate something by increments of 15 degrees, etc. Use the Shift key. All right, so now I've got this selection here, and I can just take advantage of the alignment. See that? Those little pink snapping guides that just pop up. And that tells me I'm now dead center in the image, and that's really where I want this iris to be. So to start the illustration, I'm just going to work with separate layers for each of these basic shapes, because I had this idea in my head that maybe I could kind of get this to feel like separate pieces of paper, almost like a sort of photo collage, a collage kind of look to it. And I'm not sure if I'll go so far as to add drop shadows and things like that, but I just thought it'd be kind of an interesting way to solve the problem with these simple shapes, to kind of have each of them feel cut out. I might just do that in a flat way. Again, I don't know if I'll go so far as to try and make it have dimension, but I just thought that was an interesting concept. And to make that easy for myself, I'm going to make sure I work on separate layers. So I'm going to go to our orange, and I'm just going to pop that in there. So now I know that's my center of my illustration, and I'm good to go from there. Okay, before I go any further, see if you have any questions. Also say hi to some folks in the chat and say thanks for joining. Hey, Golden Rose and Steve and Bev and Angela and Cody and Seth and Christine. Did I say that? And Moda Void and Afroha. How's it going, everybody? I see who else am I missing here? There's more folks in there, but I feel like I'm scrolling too fast. Well, if I missed you, I'm sorry. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you pop over to Behance if you want to ask me a question or say something, because I'm not reading the chat on YouTube. I'm reading it on behance.net/live. Okay? Alrighty. So, not seeing any questions. All right, let's carry on, right? So behind this layer, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use again my marquee tool, and I'm going to make a circle, okay? And this is going to represent the top half of the eye there, okay? So remember, I want to snap this to the center of that shape, and I'm going to fill that with white, okay? And then I'm just going to take that same selection while I've got it, hold down the Shift key. So I'm going to first start dragging and then hold down the Shift key. It's going to lock it so it's vertical, right? It's going to lock it in a perfect vertical as I'm moving it. And I'm just going to take it up to here, right? And make sure that we're aligned with the, I'm going to go up a couple of pixels because I see that I missed that alignment right there, which is actually not a big deal. I can always correct this. But I'm going to do Command-Shift-I. This selects the inversion of the current selection. You can't see that until I zoom out, but now you'll notice the dancing ants or the marching ants, the active selection, whatever you want to call it, is outside of that circle. So when I hit delete, okay, what it's done is, now this might be very faint for you, so I'll go ahead and make our background bigger so you can see that, or darker, sorry. You should be able to see that white shape now behind the eye. To make this like abundantly clear, I'm going to just knock a color in here. See that? So I was able to take a circle, take that same shape and just slide it up and then delete, get rid of some of it, right? So I can then take this and just bump it down here. Now I missed it by like a pixel or two. So what I'll do is, let me just step back a minute. And we'll go back to where we were with our original fill. And I'll just zoom in on pixel layer here. And I'm gonna, hang on a second, before we fill it, there we go. And just tap it on down like that. And make sure we are on a layer underneath. And I'll just fill that. And then do the same old thing. Start moving it, hold down the shift key so it locks it. And snap that up to there. See that little guideline again? Pops up, so handy, tells me, yep, you're in the right spot. Command Shift I, delete it, and now I've got that eye shape right there. Now, of course, remember, this is a very graphic and like very simple representation of a face, so we're gonna do a lot of cheating. Now, normally, your face is not, an eye rather, is not shaped like this. You know, if I were gonna be a stickler about it, and you should be a stickler sometimes. You know, you're gonna draw an eye, it's gonna be, you're gonna account for this asymmetry here, right? Where we always have this kind of line passing through at an angle, basically, of the line. I'm looking here, here's tear duct, okay? So we're looking at the inside of the eye here, okay? And the brow ridge right here, we could cast that shadow and then get that upper lid. Okay, so just, you know, we're not at all going for any kind of photorealistic situation here. What we're doing is a very stylized look for this eye. But, you know, important to point out how the anatomy should work in a real life situation. So the cool thing is that this kind of symbolism that we're using, this circle within this almond shape, is universally understood as an eye. I mean, if I were just to leave that alone without doing any more of the illustration, we'd still understand it to be, hey, that's an eye. And that's a kind of a cool thing. Yeah, now for some of these shapes, you know, what's cool is I could use the pen tool, okay, one of my favorite, sometimes underutilized, underappreciated tools here in Photoshop, because it's something you can use to actually export paths to Illustrator. You're creating vector paths. There are quite a few little vector tools available to you in Photoshop. Not everything is pixel-based, right? Not everything is raster. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer here. And like for this eyebrow shape, right? I just want to come out from here and use the pen tool to make some really nice Bezier curves. Say that, it's fun, Bezier. And come on back down this away. See, I like how precise you can get with this. And then you can always modify them later. You hold down the Command key and you can snag any one of these anchor points or handles and play around with your shapes until you really get something you like, right? And you come over here to your paths, okay, and there it is, there's my work path, okay? You can call it something if you want to be good, you call it, you know, eyebrow. And if you hold down the Command key and just tap on that little image preview of that path, okay, it'll make it an active selection. How nice. Come back, and I'm going to fill that with some color. See this little warning that pops up here, this little triangle next to my color swatch? That's telling me that's not a print safe color. Out of habit, I usually will correct that, you know, if I think this might wind up in print. I just tap on the square to the right of it. See this? Okay, when you do that, Photoshop will select the color that's the nearest neighboring color to what you wanted in hue, saturation, and value, hue, saturation, and brightness, but that is print safe, and that's a pretty handy trick. So if you don't know it, use it. All right, so we'll throw that in there. And I'm gonna stick with this palette here, pretty tight. Come up a little warmer here towards the reds and a little lighter, okay? And then again, I got that little warning, but I'm not concerned about it. Now here, you know, I could use the pen tool again, so I think I will. I'm gonna go ahead and start here. And in my sketch, I had it overlapping the eye, which I thought was kind of a nice touch. Or sort of like bumping right up against it, which I mean is a tangent, and you kind of want to avoid that. In this case, I'm probably going to change my mind and just have it off to the side. So I'm going to go ahead and stick it over here. And then we're gonna a nice curve there, and there, and there. Okay, holding down the Option key here. Remember, that's Alt on a PC. That just gives me the opportunity to go back to just creating some straight lines, no curves at all. What I really want to do is just outline this shape, okay? So, new layer, pop that in there. And so far so good, so I'm gonna put a blank layer here behind everything. And then just see how we're doing. Yep, okay. So far so good. And let's now keep on going. So I'm going to start labeling these. Good habit. There we go. Try and learn good habits, folks. Don't be like me. Don't work with 600 layers and forget to label them, or at least group them, okay? Oh, okay. I don't know. What is this? This is nothing yet. So that's going to be... shadow shapes. All right. The cool thing about the pen tool... well, there's lots of cool things, actually. But one of the cool things is you can create paths that are separate from one another, but they're going to still like be a part of... the same group of paths. So what I'm saying is basically, even though these are separate from one another, these two paths, right? They're going to save them on the same path layer, which is pretty nifty. Actually, I'll pull this out just a hair, like so. I'll take advantage of that Option key. I might just come straight down for this because I think that might be nice. And I might have to bump that up so it doesn't feel too much like a tangent, like right there against the bottom. There might be a couple things I change here with these shadow shapes based on, and the sketch is, you know, it's just a sketch. It is what it is. But let's just see how things go. And here, kind of want to play off of this curve. So I'm going to start there. So this is going to follow directly from there. And I want to sort of connect it to the eyebrow curve. So I'm going to follow that. See how that feels. I think that'll look pretty good. Come back over to this side, and then we're going to hug this path. And you see I'm zooming in a lot, right? And again, that's the benefit of using the key commands, is I'm totally fine to stay in this mode where my drawing hand, which I'm left-handed, my drawing hand is holding the stylus and I'm working, my right hand is on the keyboard, and I'm just, you know, using the tools, changing the tool I'm using, switching between modes of the tools, etc. You know, and it's just so helpful to not have to jump back all the time to the toolbar, right? Know what I mean? All right, feeling like I want to just go straight up again. I'm liking these verticals that pop in here and there. Got some diagonals here. We got some curvilinear paths. And I like that variety. All right, now this I'm actually going to connect right up until here, and then I might pop back like I did. I feel like that might be too much of a change in the complexity of the shape, like too many different directions that I'm going, but I'm just gonna try it for now and see how we go. See what happens. That feels pretty good. All right, so now you see I've got these 3 separate paths. If I come over to my paths, you'll see they're all still there on the work path. All right, and I'm gonna call that shadows. And make a selection out of that. I'm gonna come back here. I haven't yet decided on my face kind of color, but it won't be too dissimilar from what we're looking at actually right here. Actually quite similar. So I'm gonna just go ahead and create a color on top of our sketch now. And actually that's gonna be the face color, but I'll go ahead and fill it anyway, it doesn't matter. And I'll go ahead again and do this. Now, you know how to lock layer transparency, I hope. And if you don't, check this out. Come over here, lock layer transparency. Okay. And that's going to make it so that you could change this color if you want. Come over here to my curves and I could just do this kind of thing, whatever. But if I really want to lock the layer transparency and do some painting and some filling and so on, I could do that. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. We're going to actually come back to that in a moment. But let me just grab this color. I'm going to go a hair lighter so that we make sure we have contrast with the hair. Didn't mean to say hair twice there, if you'll forgive me. All right, so that's kind of where things sit. Not feeling this curve right here. It's not good, like a nice enough curve. See how it's kind of bumpy right there? So that's the kind of thing now where what I could do, I mean, there's several options. You could just modify the path, right? That's one thing. You can actually modify paths. You can just tap on them, grab your pen tool, and tap with the option key like that, command key, pardon me. I can just kind of round that out a bit and get more picky with that shape. I can pull back this, so we're going to go for more of a follow that, the edge of that. Might want to move this up a hair. Really what I'm going for is more of a curve out. So I think I might have just take this whole anchor and do this. Let's see how that feels. I think that's a bit better. It's not like a huge difference, but I just think it'll be less abrupt. So I want to try this now. Come back to our layers. Make a new layer and fill that. Yeah, that's much better, says me. I'm gonna grab this section of it, just pull it on up a bit so we don't have an issue with there being a just being so close there to the bottom of the illustration, right? We don't want to like hug the border. So I just want to get that filled in. And that looks better. Almost feel like now I should probably align these two. So might just see how that might shake out. And for this, I might even just like try and freehand it. Nah, I'm not that good. Let's try the elliptical Marque tool and see if I can line that up with that curve. And then we'll just bump up against here. Knock that off. And then let's bump down against here and fill that. Yeah, I like this better. I like this becoming something that gets interrupted by this space, but then picks back up again. This is all just like little decisions to be made about the composition and whatnot. And you know, you don't have to be as picky as me, but just pay attention to stuff like that when you're making these sorts of things, you know, the shapes. And this is still bugging me here. I could, you know, really I could go for let's see here. Could probably go for something more like that, where we're definitely dealing with an obvious curve that's a perfect circle all the way down and through. So what I can do is I can test that, you know, just grab this color, grab a really simple clean inking tool like a Clean as a Whistle, which is in the mega pack. Where are you? Clean as a Whistle. Here. So let's just grab this. Just fill that in for a minute. And I'm gonna Command-Shift-I. So I just inverted that selection, and I'm just taking that background color and painting for a minute. This isn't like a final solution at all. This is me just checking to see how that looks. So I can decide. Yep, that is better. Okay, so now I know. So what I can do is come back to the shadow shapes layer that we have here, and I can just go ahead confidently, I can confidently just erase away what's on the outside here. And then I can come in here and Command-Shift-I again, so I've inverted that one more time. So I'm back on the inside, and now I'm just gonna get that filled in. See that? I think that's just a nicer thing to see happening, that perfect circle there. I think that works better. So now what I do is I squint and I look at the image. And when I do that, I can see my values really well. And like this hair, for example, there's definitely not enough contrast between it and the shadow shape on the face. So obviously, you know, I have two choices. I can go lighter with the hair, in which case it might get too close to this color. I could go darker with both of these. That might be the first thing I try. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm gonna start with this, and I'm gonna push it about to, actually, let me try this. I'm gonna go start with that and go a hair darker. And then take our shadow shapes and go a hair darker than that. Lock transparency. And then go to our eyebrow shape. And we're gonna sample that. We're gonna go darker for that. Lock the transparency. Actually, I'm gonna play off of this. So now we're definitely getting contrast here, but it's actually pretty, these are pretty similar still now, this color and this color. So I could go lighter or darker. I mean, it's a tough call because I don't want to go so light that it starts to feel like I'm giving you something to look at that isn't the orange, this bright orange here. One solution is to actually go the same color as the hair, okay? And then what you do is you make that work by, this is now a solid shape, which is kind of nice. And then you come in here and you add texture or line work or whatever it is, which is similar to how we had our sketch. We had those wavy lines coming through, and that could solve that problem quite nicely, where you just want to add a little bit of interest in there without it certain like just cutting off your illustration like that. But another idea, which is, this isn't in our sketch, but another idea is you could have something like this, where you could have hair just coming over the face, you know, like that. And then we wind up sort of having this more triangular composition where we focus in on the eye. You know, there are several ways you could go about this to arrive at a solution. And I mean, I look at this and I think this could work. You know, we go back and look at what it was like before. You know, I mean, I haven't yet played with texture and things like that. There's ways to direct the eye here. I mean, obviously the main thing we're doing is we're using this one color standing out that forces us to look where there's a lot of contrast between white and this to get in. And the other thing I want to do with this circle, by the way, is I want to do concentric circles here, like when you cut a carrot and you see the rings of the carrot, which can be kind of like similar to, you have the iris, and then you have your pupil, and around that, you know, you have various patterns and whatnot. I don't know, see, so many choices to make. And the beautiful thing about working digitally is you can just play around with all these ideas and see what works. If you have a comment about things in the chat, I'd love to know if you think that hair solution works. You know, like, what do you think about that? That could work. Could certainly be a way to go. You know, if you're worried about there being this dark shape, this dark shape, this dark shape, and then we don't have any dark shapes down here, you know, you could always come down here. I can hold down the command key and select my shadow shapes by tapping on this little image preview for that layer, command, and then tap on that layer. So I've made a selection there now, and I can just go above that, and I've got my dark color selected here, and I've still got that clean as a whistle brush. So hang on a minute. For some reason, I'm not at the wrong color. There we go. And I can just paint a sort of a nostril kind of a shape here. Just go like that. You know what I mean? And that gives us just a pop of that contrast down there. So we go 1, 2, and 3, and then we don't lose this shape down here. You know, so that's another option. There's even an S-curve kind of thing you could do here, where you're creating a shadow around the nostril. And I think that actually might be the way to go now that I look at it. Kind of liking that idea. So what I would do is something along these lines. I'm following that and thinking, okay, how's that going to play out if it were to just kind of come down and then slope around here? And then just grab this color, go back to our shadow shapes, add one layer like that, and I'm going to reduce the opacity so I can very clearly see how it compares with that other shape. What I do is I just grab, whoops. See that I just did that trick where I used the shift key to quickly switch from the elliptical marquee to the rectangular marquee, right? I'm deleting this now, and let's see, I think what we want to do is we want to take this whole shape, we just want to slide it down like this. It's like an echo basically, or rather we wouldn't call it an echo because it's not in this facing the same direction. So I mean, if you want to use the right terminology, what we have is a motif here. We have a theme. We have a what's the word? Is echo the right word? I think echoing is where you use the same shape in the same orientation. So I want to be sure I'm not using the wrong terms here with you, gang. But you get the idea. So I'm taking this idea of this shadow shape, and then I'm like repeating it in a slightly different orientation down here. And what that does is it makes this nose come forward, right? And we still get the idea of, okay, yeah, I see a face now. And that's kind of fun. So another thing you can do is with the hair. So like I'm looking at that shape, and I'm feeling like I want to take this idea, this curve to straight, and then I want to reverse it. So I just want to see what happens if I duplicate that. So I did Command J, that just copies the whole layer. And I've set up my actions here to where I can flip horizontally and flip vertically, because that's something I'm constantly having to go here to do anyway. And I can then just do a quick thing like this, flip horizontal. And then I'm going to rotate that and see how that plays up here. I don't know, tough call. There are other questions you have to keep in mind, like, okay, do I want to use the same diagonal with the angle that I'm choosing here, or do I want to play off this and just flip it? You know, like what's the right call there? And probably either way you go, I can check myself here. Got that pretty close. You know, either way you go is probably fine. These are not life or death kind of decisions you have to make, but they're definitely the sort of thing that illustrators will fret over, myself included, where I have to say, okay, you know, oh, is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? So like, you know, it's kind of nice to have this slice of the illustration like come through right there. So anyway, it's like it's an exercise in, you know, thinking with geometry and thinking with alignment and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if any of you out there have ever like tried to create an illustration this way or given these kinds of things some thought. I hope that watching me go through this process where I'm thinking through how each shape relates to the other and how much space there is between shapes and, you know, the angles of things and the contrast and whatnot, the placement of things. These are just considerations that, you know, even though to the average person looking at the illustration, they might not know why they like to look at it and why it's pleasing to them. But you'll know because you did it. You made it happen by actually consciously putting things where you put them, you know? Another great example is like right here, I can see ideally what would happen is that this curve here would be more of a perfect circle just because it would help with what we've been doing with everything else. Now, I don't know why I keep doing this. The right way to do this is to just start from the center. Hold down the Option key, hold down the Shift key right afterwards, and then get yourself the right size circle. Select, modify, expand. We're going to do 2 pixels. Yeah, so some people might say, why you bother? You know, but it's a good reason, because if you care about craft, you know, if you care about craft, then you should care about this stuff. You know, it's going to make a difference in your art. People might not always be able to put their finger on like why something looks better, like I just said, but actually, you can kind of do some neat stuff that makes a difference, right? So there you go. See, that's a small change, but I think it's one that's worth making. All right, so we've got our basic shapes here. Now it's time to think about how to make this look more interesting. Now, you know, you could, you know, for certain publications or whatever. I mean, I look at illustrations all the time and I see like flat color illustrations that are just like this. It's a graphic kind of solution. There's some nice shapes to look at. There's an idea there, and you're done. You know, they print that bad boy. You'll look at this and see this in the New Yorker all the time. Look at the work of someone like Malika Favre, who does fantastic stuff with just really beautifully composed flat shape vectors and so on. For this one, though, like I said on the outset, kind of interested in maybe playing around with some textures and some other things just to spice it up a little bit. So that's where I want to go from here. Now, each of these are on a separate layer, which is great. So I've got my shadows. I'm confident that I can combine these. I feel like pretty good about it, but I just want to hide it one more time. See how I feel about that. Now that I look at it, it's hard to say whether I want to go with a straight line. So I'm just going to grab my polygonal lasso tool And I'm going to slice through this roughly the same angle but reversed from what's on the other side of the canvas right here, this angle. Okay, I'm just gonna do that and then look at it and see which I like better. So the issue with this is we lose that S curve that we created. Not the end of the world, but let's see. So I'm gonna undo that. So we're here and we're here. You know what? Not gonna sweat it. Not gonna sweat it this time. All right, comments. Let's see. Why am I using Photoshop and not Illustrator? Well, we started in Photoshop, and I just love working in Photoshop. You could easily do this in Illustrator, of course. However, on the texture side, you wind up having to kick it over to Photoshop anyway, if you really want to play with brushes and textures. So, you know, easier for me to start in one environment, finish in the same environment. All right, Seth, that's funny about the dermatologist. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions about like how I'm running around with all these tools and making these decisions. So, does Photoshop have more brushes? Oh my God, yes, Christine. Thousands. Yes. When you're doing only a portion of a face, do you ever check your composition by seeing what it would look like if the composition was mirrored to complete the entire face? Yeah, sure. You know, in this case, you know, what you'd wind up with is you'd have the eye way too far over, and you'd have much more of the nose showing. So you'd have your eyes like spread out crazy and they wouldn't fit. But because we're only seeing a part of it, no one's going to notice that. Like the average person or any person looking at this will immediately understand the context. Of course, in this instance, what you'd have is, because you'd have another eye in between here before you get to the second eye, you'd have too much space between the two eyes, and so that would throw things off. But for the sake of this being a nice looking composition, we're going to do it this way. Now, you know, one other thing to do, of course, would be to have all this grouped together. And, whoops, hang on a minute. Let me just undo that for a second. We got to start from the tippy top. I'll make sure I get everything. So yeah, if you wanted to avoid that problem, what you'd do is you'd start with everything being like this big, you know, so we're really just you know, and then you have room to like place all this stuff a little further to the left, but then you miss out on having this space around here, and I'm not sure that helps the composition. So, you know, tough call, but in this case, don't worry about it. No one's going to be aware of the fact that there's too much space here. Alrighty, so let us now, we got like 10 minutes at least left, so I'm going to run through this with some textural choices and whatnot. So I'm going to actually just start painting. I'm going to make selections. So first thing I'm going to do is on the face, which is this color, right? I'm just going to paint on that layer. So grab the same color. And we're going to start with, let's see, I'm going to go to spring 2020. Let's do a little mushy brush or washy worn, I think, mushy. All right, now I'm going to go to normal. Make the background color slightly lighter. Okay, this is taking advantage of color dynamics. It's using a bit of the foreground color, a bit of the background color, mixes the two, depending on how much pressure I'm using. Okay, I'm gonna grab Splish Splash. And just throw some texture in there. And maybe some Brock, slightly darker. Okay, and then we're gonna grab bouquet brush, and we're gonna go to multiply mode. Go a little lighter in that. Let's see how that works. And pop over to spring 2019. And what do we got here in the way of texture? Predator is kind of interesting. So we're really just kind of like messing up the surface here. That's all I'm doing. And then do the same for like the other layers, you know? So let's come over to the hair, for example, or actually I guess I'll go to the shadows since that's the next logical place to move to. And we'll throw some spatter in there. And I'm just playing around here, folks. There's no like huge game plan for what I'm doing, just so you're aware. I want to make sure everyone knows I'm not like saying this is exactly how it's going to look in my brain. I mean, I definitely don't have that kind of approach. Okay? It's important for you to know that. Winter 2020. A lot of halftones in here. I like this Aztec, haven't used this in a while, so just throw that over there. Actually, that's kind of like the most interesting brush for that section, I think, that I should be using, frankly. A little bit of the dry grass. And now we want to go just a hair darker, so I want to make sure I'm hitting the darks. So what have we got with the summer 2020, I think, had that Spladoosh brush, which was pretty handy for that. Let's see. Or the old fence, that's nice. There we go. And I think, did I go too dark with this? Yeah, let's hit that with overlay. Whoops, where am I going here? Screen. Playing with layer blending modes. Actually, let's go back to normal and let's just knock opacity down. So yeah, it still reads, that's good. I want to make sure things read. All right, coming over to the hair now. Over here, and we'll go ahead and include the eyebrow. I'm holding down the command key and the shift key and grabbing these areas of the these little image previews in my layer palette, and that gives me a selection of those, so I can create a layer on top and I can play around with what's there. So go a little darker, and we'll use that same Spladoosh brush here. Come back to that lighter color, just pop it on top a few times. There we go. Kind of like that as like the dominant sort of texture, but Impressionista is really nice. as well, so I might throw some of that in there. Don't forget that nostril. Forgot to label that one, but I know it's down here somewhere. There it is. So I'm gonna shift, make sure that that is selected as well, so we can get that little bit of love. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do is over the whole thing, we're gonna grab our gesso brush. So that's in the, ooh, I wanna say it's still in the Mega Pack paint box. I hope it's in there. Yes, it is. Gesso thick. And I'm just gonna use like a medium gray kind of value. Make my brush really big. And just pass over this whole thing. Like this. Different directions. I'm sure you can hear me stabbing and attacking my Wacom canvas here. Wacom surface, pardon me, with this brush. And I'm gonna pull up my curves and just go crazy with the contrast. See this? So I'm like making a serious S curve right there. And look how fast you can create this nice texture. And then I'm gonna set that to overlay. And then play with, let's see, maybe soft light's better. And then play with the opacity there, maybe like 60. That kind of like just has a texture that just passes over everything. Which is a nice thing to do as well. And let's then grab a brush that has some nice inking weirdness to it. Like chopped is a good one. Come in here and grab a color that's about like this. And we're just gonna do, yeah, I gotta go a little lighter than that so it shows up. There we go. So these are those sort of like little details at the end that take it from being just a series of flat shapes, you know, and hopefully they make it into something a bit more interesting, right? And I'm actually going to take our shadow shapes, make them slightly darker. Curves are so great. And now I want to use that, what I told you I was going to do with the iris of the eye. So using that same brush, I could either, I think I'll set it to multiply using the same color. Actually, that's not going to work, so I'm on a separate layer, but I'll just grab a different color. Here we go. See how that looks? Not sure if that's enough contrast, but I'm just gonna draw my way around inside here. So hopefully this idea of like a carrot is clearly communicated, you know, like that. Alrighty, let's knock those all back. So, and that's pretty much, you know, that's kind of like a good place to stop. I mean, there's more stuff I could do. Remember how I talked about adding some dimension and things? I mean, it's definitely something you could do. We could do like torn edges and things if you wanted to, and suggest that this is a collage or whatnot. But I think, you know, for this is going to work out. You know, this is a decent solution, and I like the design of it. And I think we're in good shape. So I hope that was educational, informative for you. And thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. We've done 3 illustrations. We've checked out what it's like to work on an editorial assignment from the beginning to the end. We talked a little bit about the business of it up front on that first episode, so go back and watch that. You got to approach your art directors. A lot of them, it's great. They're on Twitter, they're on Instagram. You can find their contact information pretty easily. Those who work for major publications, those who work for smaller publications. Check out what's around your area, like local stuff and regional magazines and online places that use illustration. And it's a great way to get your foot in the door and get started with drawing for clients, especially on a tight deadline where you get in that habit of working efficiently, working fast, and working with a lot of volume. Okay, thanks for watching again, and we'll pick up the masterclass again next time with a different topic. If you have any questions, you can always hit me up on Twitter. And until then, everybody, take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and have a great weekend. Ciao for now.